You're listening to From the Chair, and I'm your host, Mike Hamilton. Join us each episode as we talk to athletic directors from across America. We're going to talk about topics like leadership, career development, issues of the day, and I can promise you we're going to have some fun along the way too. So sit back, listen in, and let's dive in. Let's go. All right, welcome to today's episode. My guest today, the athletic director at the University of Colorado, Rick George. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing good, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Always great to see you. I was thinking here as I was prepping for this, we met now almost 30 years ago. I just arrived at Tennessee, and you were getting things done at Vanderbilt, and had already had your first stint at Colorado, but then
right.
Came to Vanderbilt, and then an unbelievable career since. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I told you I want to talk to you about Coach Prime, and then obviously some things that you're doing at the University of Colorado that are real exciting on the facility front. So we'll jump right in. For those who don't know your career track, obviously you played football at Illinois, and getting out of school, went right into the football scene, and eventually ended up at Colorado with Coach McCartney's staff, and then moved here to Nashville. I say here, I live here in Nashville, with Coach DiNardo and the Vanderbilt staff. And I found it intriguing that not only were you overseeing football ops and the football program, but also, as I knew you, running everything on the external side at the time. And then, you took a track towards golf, and you ran a nonprofit, the 4Kids Foundation, worked with the PGA Tour, president of the Champions Tour, executive vice president of the PGA Tour, COO of the Texas Rangers, before returning as athletic director at the University of Colorado about 10 years ago now. And I'm a student of leadership, and I really love the fact that you can accomplish things from a lot of different chairs, a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different notions as to how you lead. And I find it really intriguing that you have this set of experiences that touch the bases, no pun intended, of a lot of different kinds of sports. And I really wanted to come off the top talking about, what the learnings from that, the common themes, right? I mean, there's so many people that come into college athletics and they've been in college athletics their entire career. That's what they know. I think it's great that you've had these high-level experiences in some other sectors of the athletic marketplace, and curious, how those inform how you lead today.
Well, look, I've been blessed and fortunate in my career. I've seen it a lot of different things, and what I tie it all back to is it's all about relationships. It's about how you treat people. I don't think I ever left a job, where somebody didn't want me to come back because I tried to make it better from the time I got there until I ended, and I always left the right way when I left a role. And I think relationships are so key in this industry, in this business. When we hired Coach Prime, and I know we're going to talk about that. I mean, I heard from Mark McGuire, who I hadn't heard from in a while, and Jerry Kelly from the PGA Tour. So different eras of my career, different people were reaching out that I hadn't talked to in a while. And, again, I think it's all about relationships. And what I would tell young people out there, work hard, treat people the right way. And it'll come back and help you and in spades as you move forward. So, like I said, I've been blessed, and I've had a really good career that I've enjoyed, and I've been around a lot of great people, and I've learned a lot through that process. And as a leader, it's about your character, and it's about your integrity. It's about how you treat people, how you motivate people, and hold people accountable to do the things that they need to do. And you can do it in a way where it's not condescending, and more so where it's uplifting and motivational to get people to get outside of their comfort zone. The only way you get better is you got to get outside of your comfort zone and do things that you're maybe not used to doing, but it helps you grow in this business.
It's interesting too, the kinds of different jobs you've had within the different places where you've worked. I read through the bio, and there's budgeting, and there's ticket sales, and there's corporate partnerships, and the actual leadership of the tour, and those kinds of things. A significant uptick in ticket revenue when you came to the Rangers and your time there, operating under Nolan Ryan as the CEO. Did you, formulaically speaking, were you the kind of guy that said, "Hey, tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it"? Or did you feel like you had a particular skill set? I mean, the external side of the work sort of is glaring in some ways as something that was a common theme, but you've done a lot of different kinds of things. Did you express interest in those differing things to get to there, or was it more what I said about, hey, put me in the position you need me to be successful.
No, look, I
Help you
always
be
raise
successful.
my hand to help and be a part of it. And, I think one thing that I do well is I engage and articulate our vision and our mission very well. And when you're out there selling corporately and you're in the business that we're in, and you've got different constituents, whether it's a student athlete, whether it's a donor, whether it's your owners of your team. You've got to have a good message, and you got to. And I'm a big believer in strategic planning. I think, how do you know when you get to where you want to be if you don't have a plan that gets you there? And so I've always focused and always had a strategic plan as part of who I am and what we do, so everybody knows what their role is for us to achieve that vision and for us to hit our mission every day.
So you've worked with a lot of people that have been successful at a high level, and I'm going to call out two that I'm interested in your assessment of what made them the successes that they were. Not surprisingly, one will be Coach McCartney and the success he had at Colorado and national championship, et cetera, et cetera. And then the second is Nolan Ryan. Certainly, there's the element of literal physical talent, but you don't have the success that Nolan Ryan had for the length of time that he did without some other X factors involved there. Any call outs from those two guys in particular that you saw, hey, these are things that really stand out about these two guys that I worked with?
Look, I think, going back to Bill McCartney and working for him as I did, I mean, he taught me a lot about being convicted to who you are. And, faith was really important to him. And he lived it. He also had a great love for family and his family, which again is something that I value. And he was disciplined, and he held people accountable, and it didn't matter who they were. If you didn't perform, if you didn't do the rules and that he had in his programs and have those core values, then he'd sit you down. You wouldn't play, and it didn't matter who it was. I mean, we played 31-31 tie, if you recall, in the Pigskin Classic against Tennessee, and our star running back, he suspended him for that game. Mike Pritchard, we bring from receiver, and he runs for over 200 yards. But that's just who Coach Mack was. I mean, you knew that this is the way it is, and if you strayed, he'd bring you right back in. But I learned a lot from him. I admire him. I see him every other Wednesday. He's always in the building on Wednesday, walking around the track, so he's still with the program. And then Nolan Ryan, Nolan's about character and integrity, and those were things that, as a good leader, you have to have character, integrity, because you got to do what you say you're going to do, because people are watching you. Even when the lights are off, they're watching you, and you've just got to live your life in a way that people will emulate and try to adhere to, because the leader sets the tone.
All right, well, let's segue into Coach Prime. I know that's what a lot of people are probably wanting to listen to this podcast for today, and rightly so.
There.
What's that? It's certainly you have shaken the landscape in college football with the hire, and it's been great to watch from the outside looking in. And I know early on from my time out there this fall that going through the change is never easy, and you have a great passion for the university, and obviously you understand the sport of football and know what it takes to win, and I know that you were firmly committed to putting Colorado back on the footing that it deserves. And I know early on you focused in on Coach Prime. So, look, he got a lot of exposure at Jackson State through some of the video he did and the exposure that Jackson State had. He's a guy that has drawn attention to himself through his persona and also his, let's be candid, his success on the field as a player, right? I mean, incredible player. And so there's, a lot of times you want to talk about sizzle or steak. Well, I think Dion carries both of those well. And so maybe let's just start by talking about what drew you to him initially. I know that it was a multiple week process to actually, bringing him to Boulder, but interested as to why he rose to the top of your list very quickly.
Well, the first thing I'll say is everybody that says, if you're going to make a decision It gives you more time to find a person for a role when you have to make a change. Don't. I'd rather do it in a 2-week time period than a 2-month time period, because the
Yeah.
anxiety for 2 months is a lot greater than it is for 2 weeks. But Coach was on my list from the start. As I looked at who was out there in the landscape of who I thought we could attract to Colorado, he certainly appealed to me. In a significant way. He was number one on my list from the start, and there were others that were right there. We had a really good list of candidates for that role. But, I watched a lot of YouTube. I watched a lot of, I saw the 60 Minutes interview that he had done, and just a lot of the things that his values and his beliefs that I believed in. And again, we went through the process, and we developed a relationship mostly over text, because he was incredibly focused on what he wanted to accomplish at Jackson State. I didn't want to interfere in that. We rarely talked. I would send him a text message and say, "Hey, it snowed this morning, but this afternoon the snow's gone." Different things like that, because I knew weather was important to him. But his character and his values are what drew me to him, and his honesty and his attention to detail when he and I sat down was far better than any others that I had looked at.
I'm interested. Obviously, you have a different, perhaps. I'm going to correct myself when I get into this. But maybe you're recruiting a different student athlete at Colorado than at Jackson State, though I know he signed some highly regarded student athletes at Jackson State. You would seemingly think, well, okay, I also need to make sure that I've got the staff around me that has coached at the Power 5 or FBS level, and he did that. Did that plan come together as a work in progress? That when you guys were first having your conversations, did you already see that he knew where he was headed with that? Should he decide to come to Boulder? Just intrigued by because it became very apparent in his early meetings. Hey, I've got a certain kind of student athlete that I want to bring here, and I'm committed to it, from the get, right?
Yep.
So interested to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and look, I would tell you as a leader, if you're not talking about the people around you and your team around you, because it's not about me as a leader, it's not about you as a leader, it's about the people around you that help you get to where you want to go. And we only sat down one time through this process, and we sat down and he laid out who he wanted on his staff. And as I look back on that a month or 2 months later, because I still have that book that he put together, it was almost to a person, the people that he wanted, he got. And I was impressed by the staff that he had on paper, but I was more impressed by, the ability that to bring all of them to bear and to be at Colorado. You talk about a Sean Lewis, who was a great head coach at Kent State, who's got an incredible offense. For him to step down from a head coaching role to be an offensive coordinator, that's significant. To get a Charles Kelly from Alabama, that's significant. And so there's a number of staff members that he has on his staff now that were, all of them, I would say 8 of the 10 or 9 of the 10 were on there on that sheet that he shared with me when he and I met. So he was intentional. He knew who he wanted. He knew the people that he wanted around him. And again, I think every great leader's got great people around him. And I feel really confident about the team that he's put together.
I'm curious, let's go tangible and intangible. The things that you've seen that he has brought to your program that have been difference makers, maybe some of it you expected, but some of it you've been surprised by, because certainly it's been the notoriety of the hire has been significant. It's generated a lot of national attention for the Buffaloes. So that's tangible, right? But interested in, having working there alongside of him, tangible things that you see on campus that maybe we don't see on, ESPN or whatever at this point, but you're seeing the differences there in Boulder.
Well, look, I think the one thing that's different is he wanted to meet a lot of people on campus. We went over and met with Lori Bergen, who's the dean of our mass communication. He wanted to talk to her about, what they were doing and, digital and social media and things like that. So it's far bigger than, being a football coach. He's gone to a lot of different things to interact and engage. He spoke to the law students and had a full auditorium that did a Q&A with, and so that is, I think, really important. It's really important to him that he embraces the community embraces him. I mean, he went on a couple week long where he would go to different breakfast spots and he would rank them and give them exposure. And, that was a lot of fun. We're serving more grits in Boulder than we ever have because of his arrival. So, that's just one piece of it. And you see the tangible things. But I think it's really important as it relates to recruiting. What he does on social media, young people want to see that. Young people engage and interact in that, and he can send a message out through social media. And so he's been really good about utilizing that space to, raise up our football program, our athletic department, our university, and our community. So the impact that he's having is broad, and it's not just to the football program. And again, he knows how to use his platform to promote the things that are important to him and his program.
So obviously, working with Learfield, I know that we've seen increased interest in from the corporate community, and you've sold out your spring game. A lot of energy there. I'm sure you've had additional donor interest. Along the way, you also had on a parallel track a pretty robust plan for facility enhancement and renovation. This started long before you even knew you were going to be making a change in your football program, trying to stay ahead of the game and continue to have Colorado football facilities where they need to be, and other facilities on campus for that matter as well. Maybe share a little bit about what's going on at Folsom Field. It's pretty extensive.
Yeah, look, there's a lot that we want to do. We've kind of got a plan in our mind about what we need to do long term, and long term for me is a few years from now, because I'm getting towards the end of my career, and there's a lot of things that I still want to do here. We've got to fix the west side of our football stadium. That's a priority, something that we will wrap our arms around. We've got to upgrade our event center where our basketball teams and volleyball team play. We're renovating our track this summer to host the Pac-12s in 2024. We're putting soccer lights in for the first time, which is really going to be beneficial for our soccer team. But we've got some immediate needs. We need to build an indoor tennis facility and maybe some outdoor courts. Eventually, we'll build a lacrosse soccer stadium. I think that's 5 to 10 years down the road. Somebody else will be leading that project. But there's a lot that we have to do. I will tell you, though, that the facilities that we've built are as good as any in the country. And I think, Deion's kind of brought that out in front of people to see. And we also have great programs for our student athletes under the Crawford family, whole student athlete, mental health, nutrition, academics, career, leadership, NIL, all of those things are in place. And so, we've got a great platform here, but there's some things that we need to do from a facility standpoint for us to continue to be relevant and at a high level.
Has there been anything that Coach Prime has approached you about that maybe wasn't in that plan that he's highlighted that he thinks that needs to happen to be helpful to the program that you're willing to call out?
Well, look, there's a lot of things that, he's had input into. I would say the biggest thing is he's really been involved in our nutrition program. He wanted another meal for our student athletes, so now we're feeding our student athletes 3 meals a day. He's brought in a chef from the South, so there's some Southern food for our student athletes, and to work with our chef that we have. So he's really been a big part of that. He's also, kind of talked to our social media team and, about, how he does things. And there's a great complement between our social digital teams and what he does, from his platform. So, he's involved in everything. And, if he sees something, he will call it out and talk to me about it, and I think that's healthy. And again, I think when he came in, and I said this earlier in our conversation, I think the only way you get better is you got to get out of your comfort zone. And he got a lot of people out of their comfort zone because he's different. But he's authentic and he is who he is. And I'm not going to change who he is because I support what he's doing. And I'm confident that he's going to lead this program in a way that is going to be done the right way and it's going to achieve a lot of success in the future. And I'm excited about those days in front of us.
So you've had success a lot across the board on so many different sports. I've got to call out another one specifically. I didn't give you this in advance, but as I'm sitting here listening to you, I've known Tad Boyle for a long time. He actually was on our staff at Tennessee under Jerry Green before he left and went to work with Mark Turgeon at Jacksonville State. And then obviously he was at Northern Colorado and then at your place. And a guy that came out of, people don't realize, a lot of people probably don't know, he was actually a wealth advisor at one point. So an interesting beginning to his career. But the thing that I noticed about Tad, Rick, is, congratulations on your hire of him. He's been there for a while now. He seemingly has really developed consistency and success for Colorado basketball. And wanted to give you a chance to maybe just talk about him for a second, if you don't mind.
Yeah, look, I give Mike Bone the credit for hiring because he did. And I've been able to keep him for 13 years, and he's done a great job. And Tad is who he is. He's very passionate. He really cares about his student athlete. He's made that program better. On the way too early, top 25 for ESPN, they've ranked us 13, and he just brought in one of the great classes that he's ever had since he's been here. He became our all-time wins leader this year at 262 wins. He's now at 272, so he's kind of writing history as he moves forward. He's the basketball's under 19 head coach that's going to Hungary this summer. So he's done a great job for that program. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the progress that J.R. Payne's making on our women's basketball program. She's done a phenomenal job. We just extended her right after her season was over. She's done an amazing job building this program. We went to the Sweet 16. We took Iowa down to the wire, in the Sweet 16, and she's just done a terrific job with that program, and I applaud her and her staff for their efforts as well. But Tad is a good one.
So two places you as an athletic director, historically speaking anyway, that you want to maybe get a chance to be a part of throughout your career. One is to serve on the NCAA Men's Basketball Committee, and the other is to be on the CFP Committee. You've had the pleasure, honor of being on the CFP Committee now for the last, I guess it's 3 years. Your time is coming to an end. Tell me a little bit about maybe some things that you learned about that process that you had not anticipated learning, and then also your view of now what is coming down the pike here pretty quickly, an expansion of the CFP.
Well, look, that was one of the greatest honors I've had in my career, is to serve on the CFP selection committee, and my time is over. I enjoyed every minute of it. I embraced it. I loved it. To evaluate and to look and be a part of that process. And what I would tell people out there, and particularly media, if you get an opportunity to do a mock CFP selection, do it, because you'll learn a lot. It's a process. There's 13 different views in the room, and there's a lot of discussion, and we don't take our role and our responsibility lightly. It's important everybody comes ready. Boo Corrigan, Gary Barta was the chair of my first year, and he did a phenomenal job of leading that room, and Boo Corrigan's doing the same thing. And I think now that it's expanding, I think you're going to have to watch more games if that's even possible, because I watched a lot of games at a lot of different times of the day and on planes, and that was kind of your focus during football. And now with the expansion, there's just a lot more to it. Evaluating a lot more teams and really being on point and doing your homework and coming into those meetings ready to go, because there's a lot they have to do. But with Boo's leadership in that room, I'm confident, just like we have the past however many years, the committee seems to always get it right at the end.
All right. So this is the last question, kind of a little bit of a fun question. You live in one of the beautiful areas of the world, not United States, of the world. A lot of outdoor activities there. If you live there, most people will either hike or bike or ski or drink craft brews or whatever. I'm interested. I know you don't have a ton of extra time, but what does Rick George do to sort of kick back and refocus and recenter yourself, given where you live?
Whenever I need to recenter myself, I get around my two granddaughters, Harper and Maddie. Maddie Harper just turned 10, and Maddie will turn April. And I try to spend as much time with them as I can in free time. I love to play golf. I work out, try to work out every day, and but being around my family is the priority, and that always grounds me and brings me back to, when I have bad days or good days, it kind of keeps you level set. And my granddaughters, I went to see Harper with a animal display that she put together yesterday at her school and took off to do that. And I encourage our staff, whenever you've got don't miss your sons and daughters things that they do, because at the end of the day, you don't want to look back and have regrets that you didn't spend time with your family when you needed it. But family's my focus, and it will continue to be.
Amen to that. It's we work in a career where you can have your family around too, right? I mean, you can bring them to a game or have them go out and grab a hot dog with granddad and watch a baseball game or a basketball game or whatever. And I think some people get so serious, wrapped up in their job, that they don't realize that those are creating lifetime memories, and there's no substitute for time. And look, there are days when I did it better than others. There are some things I say I regret I didn't do more of. Today what I do is I've still got one kid that's playing football. We have kind of a standing deal with my assistant that I have to be home by noon on Fridays, because I want to be able to be wherever he's playing football on Friday night. And sometimes it means traveling a little bit. And I try to beat my daughter's plays and those kind of things. So kudos to you, man. I knew that about you, but it's really, good news is you're where you can do that too, right? You're close by.
Right.
That's a gift.
Yeah, it is. And look, my oldest daughter shot basketball with Ann Meyer and Nancy Lieberman Klein when we were at Vanderbilt, before a game, when we were in there with our noon hoops game. And, she got to do that. And my grandkids, sit next to me during games at basketball and football. And, both my daughters have grown up in that world, Christy and Jenny, and that's part of our life. And yes, bring your kids to work when you're in athletics, and let them experience the highs and lows of your student athletes competing. But again, I'm glad I'm back in the chair as an AD in college, because it's great to see these young men and women compete at a very high level and have the joys and that they have when they're successful.
Well, hey, Rick, I knew this would go fast. I appreciate so much you taking time out of what I know is a very busy schedule to sit with me for a few minutes. Folks will get a lot out of this, not only your career experiences, but obviously your most recent hire and all the attention that has brought. I also know you as a guy who, if there are folks who are younger in the business and they're wanting to learn from somebody that's been around the block, you're a guy that's been around the block, and I'm sure you would love to take their call or visit with them somewhere along the way too. So really appreciate your time today.
Yeah. And look, for the young people out there, I'm always happy to share my experience and talk to you about, what I think is important as you navigate your journey and your career. So Mike, I really appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to doing this again in the future.
All right. True honor. All right, folks, you've been listening to From the Chair. I'm your host, Mike Hamilton. Today's guest, distinguished guest, the athletic director from the University of Colorado, Rick George. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.